your day rate. I'll turn you out in kind. When the moon is round and full, gonna teach you tricks that'll blow your mom real mind. Every doll I recognize, you're a hideous thing inside. If ever there were a lucky count, it's you. I'm your stranger, another way to get to know you. You'll never know unless we go, so let me show you. I'm no stranger, another way to get to know you. We got the noon, here comes the moon, so let it show you now. Blow your mom real mind. Every doll I recognize, you're a hideous thing inside. If ever there were a lucky count, it's you. I'm your stranger, another way to get to know you. You'll never know unless we go, so let me show you.
Hey guys, so welcome back to technically the first video of the Lotus K24 swap in the Lotus Exige. As you might have seen in the last video, I blew up my BOE Fab long rod, built 2ZZ Toyota motor that, that's like the stock Toyota motor that it comes with. But this one was fully built and had the Rev 400 supercharger kit. Was making about 360 wheel horsepower. It's going to be a bit dark in this video, but I just wanted to highlight all the parts and everything as I get them, just because I wanted to start a video that has the first, like, me just taking out the engine and then just highlighting what it's going to go over, and then most likely the next video within 2 weeks is going to be the engine in the car, possibly attempting a first start. I'm really trying to change around the way I do my videos. I'm kind of going more into like a documentary video kind of state. So like this build is just going to be, it's kind of going to be straight to the point. I will document some details, but I won't be like doing like a how-to. But I do understand that there aren't really any Lotus swap videos on YouTube from start to finish. When I say Lotus swap, I mean a Lotus Honda K swap. There's a ton of threads on Lotus Talk and stuff like that, and blah blah blah. But personally, me, I've never been into like forums. I just didn't grow up in that generation. I'm more used to like YouTube videos, and I know a lot of people are as well. So I just wanted to make a video like, hey, like it's possible to K swap your Lotus in a backyard. Just in case people are worried. Obviously this isn't like, hey, this is your first time working on a car. No, like, I'd hope that you would have taken out an engine before out of a car and put together a car, blah blah blah. Clearly I put together the R34 Skyline fully from a shell to running and driving, basically full drivetrain, full wiring, all that stuff in here. So that's why I'm not too afraid of not being able to do this. Hopefully you like my Lotus hoodie. My girlfriend's mom actually made this for me for my birthday. My birthday was this past Monday, or a week ago. turned 24. But believe it or not, there's no actual like British Racing Green hoodies with the yellow logo or any kind of apparel. So she actually kind of custom made this. It's like, I don't know, but I like it. It's the first time I've had a car oriented hoodie. Figured I'd throw that in this video. But anyways, I wanted to highlight all the parts. As you probably already saw, this video started with a time lapse of me taking out the motor. Now I didn't really go over much about that because taking out a motor is taking out a motor. Obviously, if you're gonna swap a car or do anything, I'd hope that taking out the motor is the easiest thing for you like to do, because it really is. You're disconnecting everything and just pulling it out versus putting it back in and reconnecting, which is usually the much harder part. Yeah, this is the car. So when I actually recorded the video of blowing this up, and I even mentioned I'm gonna Honda swap it, I honestly was not 100% sure. I was just gonna put a stock 2ZZ Toyota motor back in and just run the supercharger kit. But the thing is, with that supercharger kit, the horsepower of low 300 wheel horsepower would be at the limit of the 2ZZ. So I was like, I don't know if I'd just blow another one up sooner or later. But it was the simpler way of just buying a long block, taking out the blown one, putting all the accessories onto it, and putting the new one in. But I decided, as I was doing the swap, my main thing was I'd never actually worked on a Lotus to the extent of really doing heavy engine stuff. But because this had the BOE tilt clamp thing and I could just take off the clamp very easily, obviously you would be taking off the clamp anyway, this swap just kind of like was like, oh yeah, I can do that. Like, it should be actually easy, because believe it or not, this car has actually been the easiest to work on when it comes to like accessing everything, because literally the valve cover sits like up here and you can access everything. The only thing you can't get to is the intake side. Same thing with the Honda, it's going to be on the intake side, that side. It can get tight reaching in there, but everything else around it is very easy, very accessible. So I just wanted to do a video highlighting the parts as you saw me take all that stuff out. I will probably just start with the engine first. So this is the motor. I swear that thing wasn't on there for like some big reveal. I think it started drizzling last night, so I had that over. But this is the motor. I bought this at like a JDM engine depot place, which is honestly some of the worst places to buy an engine, because you can't trust anything they say. They're always going to tell you that it has 50 to 80,000 miles. We all know that's not true. This motor most likely has over 100,000 miles. They write the compression on the valve cover. They said it's 210 psi every cylinder. I did actually see them compression test it in front of me. You know, it was like 206 to 210 in every cylinder, so very good close variance. And then I did pop the valve cover. It's pretty clean. I'll show you some pictures that I took in my own time. It's pretty clean, no oil staining, no oil wiping or cam wiping on the cams. Nothing really out of the ordinary. The oil is still golden. The radiator fluid was actually greenish. So it just seems like the car was somewhat maintained and everything. But you're probably wondering, you know, like Honda K swaps, that's such a universal term, K swap, you know, the Honda K series. Now this is a K24 A2. So this is the A2 is the best out of the K24 to buy, and that is out of the 04 to 08 Acura TSX. I don't remember if there's a Type S TSX or not. I know there's also a K24 A3 and A4, and I really don't remember which one's which. I know one of them is out of a CRV, one of them is out of an Accord, but they have a different head. The A2 has the RBB head, which is the best flowing K24 head. Most people, they take the block and they put a K20 A2, which is the RSX Type S head, because that motor is a higher compression. So they'll use that head on this motor to have the 2.4 liter over the 2 liter for torque, and then they'll have the higher compression RSX Type S K20 head on it. Now we're going to be very, very simple. This is probably going to disappoint a lot of you, but I'm just staying NA at first. I'm probably realistically going to make 230, 240 wheel horsepower to the wheels, to the hubs, whatever. Now that is technically a good amount for this car, because you got to remember the torque is going to be a lot more than stock, because a stock Exige makes 220 horsepower at the crank, about 200, high 190 at the wheels. You got to remember though, that's with a supercharger. This is NA, so the heat in the engine bay and the heat management and the fluids, everything is going to be way cooler because it's NA and it's a lot more simpler. You don't have to worry about the cam wiping of the 2ZZ, because it does rev to 8,500. That's not really what the 2ZZ was designed for when it was put in the Corolla and the Celicas and all that stuff. So there's cam wiping on the 2ZZ. There's also oil pump failure on the 2ZZ that can be common. That is not what happened to me, but it can happen. So this is just a long block K24 A2, and it's basically staying that way. Now, I will discuss in the mods, but I'm just going to mention this first. So I'm going to mention this first before I move on to the mods, just because it pertains directly to the engine. These parts are not in yet, but the two things I'm doing, which is the most common to this motor that people just do like before they even put it in, I'm switching the VTEC cam solenoid to a 50-degree VTC gear. Now, I believe stock these can only pull 20 degrees or 25 degrees of VTEC, intake timing max. The 50 degrees from the K20 motor, and that allows up to 50 degrees of timing advance. Usually you will not exceed 40 to 45. I think 44, 45 is the highest people do. But anything beyond that isn't making any more power. So it does help a ton with the mid-range, which is also helpful with the torque gear bottom end. And then I am doing the Type S K20 oil pump. Now the oil pump on this, this will be in the video, in the next video, because sadly those parts aren't arriving until next week, next Monday. So, and that's actually what I'm technically waiting, because I do have a transmission for this as well, and I already have the clutch flywheel. But basically, I'm doing the Type S RSX oil pump. It's a very, very, very common thing that people immediately do to the K24. It's basically a direct bolt-on besides some shaving, but you change the windage tray and the oil pump on a K20. A K20 usually can rev to like 8,500, 9,000 stock with tuning, and the oil pump is way better for that RPM. This motor, I think, in the TSX only revs to 75, and we're going to be revving it to 8,000 to 8,500, so you just want the oil. It's not like the oil pump is going to fail if we rev it as is to 8,000, but with the track use that this car is getting, because this is technically a race car track car, we are, it's only like a $400 thing. The oil pump with the windage tray, with the timing chain, with the timing tensioner, all of that together is like a full kit. And my kit actually comes already grinded out to fit. It's not really a big mod anyway, but it was like a bit cheaper somehow. So those are the two things I'm doing. I am doing the ram headers, which I have a picture of. I'm going to have to be modifying those a bit. Luckily, a shop down the road will be doing that, like a fabrication shop that does a lot of like drift cars, which will also be in the video, but that will be towards the end of the build. And then for the intake manifold, I'm actually going to be doing a 08 SI intake manifold, which is the RBC. And then I will be doing that with a 70 mil drive-by cable throttle body. Now, mainly the RBC will lose a little bit of mid range, but it'll gain a ton more on the top end. But also the throttle body, the main reason is the TSX's drive-by cable, meaning it's an actual like electric pedal. But part of the swap, which I have the part over there, I'm converting to drive-by cable, which is usually what you want to do with this swap, because it's very complicated to do drive-by wire in this swap. So I am just converting to a bigger upgraded 70 millimeter throttle body, which requires a small adapter to bolt from the SI intake that I'm getting to that throttle body. And then that's basically it. If you guys don't know, these K-series run the MAP sensor in the intake manifold, and then the cold air intake will have the air intake temp sensor. So you don't need any kind of special MAF setup, and it's basically just run from the throttle body, just run the intake to where I need it to be. And that's basically it. I am doing a fuel rail that's aftermarket only because of the AN line. In the Lotus, I have two fuel pumps, but one of the I believe it's like, I forgot where it is. It's right here. This is actually my main fuel line to the fuel rail, and it's AN, and I'd like to keep it AN because it just makes it easy. Like once the engine's in, all it is screw this on and that's it for fuel. And that's just why I'm just keeping AN, just to keep the full fuel system that's all braided and nice and everything like that. And then looking here, I have the Moroso pan. This thing's pretty heavy, but this is for the Type S oil pump, and it fits the K20 or 24 block. They're the same. It is a baffled pan, and it adds about 2 quarts, so now the engine will hold about 7 quarts. Has 2 bunk sensors. If I ever go turbo, I can use this as a return oil feed line for the turbo. This isn't fully screwed in, so don't mind how much it's sticking out, but I do have an AIM dash in the car, which is like a crazy dash that I mentioned in my last video, and I have 4 sensors: trans temp, coolant temp, trans temp, oil pressure, oil temp, and fuel pressure. So that's 5 sensors. But the thing is, basically I just took out those sensors out of the Toyota, and I'm just going to be routing them back into the K K24, and then I'll just be plugging them back in because the wiring's all there, and then it'll have all those sensors still. So that's for the oil temperature. That's a half NPT to an eighth NPT. Here's the throttle body I was talking about. It's a 70 mil throttle body. Drive-by cable, very basic. Still has the bolt in for the idle air control valve, throttle position sensor, and then I forgot what sensor's down there because I don't know Hondas that well. And then we have the thermostat. The stock thermostat on this car opens at 178 degrees Fahrenheit, and instead, which is about like 78 Celsius, and then instead it's going to be opening up at 68 degrees Celsius, which is about 155 degrees Fahrenheit. As you know, Arizona summers are brutal to cars, so especially for track use too, just have the slightly upgraded cooling. Here's the gas pedal, innovative gas pedal. This is one of the actual swap parts. This will bolt to my stock pedal location, and then I have the throttle cable actually coming tomorrow with the bracket, which will be run next to the shift linkage all the way to the back and then go up to the throttle body. I do have a Honda ECU. I am doing a K-Pro Honda ECU. It's a K-Pro V4, mainly because that allows the immobilizer to be deactivated on the Honda side. So I have a 02 to 04 Type S harness in the mail. I'm not using the TSX harness. That will plug directly into that motor, and then that will plug into the ECU. Now, I have some more new stuff like a slave cylinder. I have a Fidenza aluminum flywheel back there. It's an 8-pound flywheel. It's the lightest flywheel you can buy for the K-Series motor. I also have a clutch, a competition stage 2 clutch, which I believe is like rated for 250 wheel torque. Here's a little thing, plug to delete heater course lines. So all I'm gonna have is an upper radiator hose and a lower radiator hose. That's it, because there's no heater in this car. There's no blower, so none of that. This is a clutch conversion line, just threads into the Lotus end and then threads into the Honda slave cylinder. Very, very basic stuff. And then the wiring harness is right here. Very simple wiring harness. Now, I have heard a lot of bad things, and I'm sure a lot of you, if any Lotus people are watching this that are interested in the swap, they're going to be very interested in my results about this. And if you know, you know. This harness is it's the only thing on the market. It used to be $350. Now it's $270, which people just say it's a total waste of money. We'll see. I did it just to simplify my swap, because I'd rather do this and modify the harness than do one from scratch and potentially have errors. So this harness is, it has its own OBD2 thing, so I will be able to plug into the Honda ECU OBD2 to do any check engine lights. Has 3 relays, ignition, starter, and fuel, I believe. The main complaint about this is the fuel wire. The fuel wire, this is the constant fuel wire for the relays. It is way too small, and you can see that. That is really thin for, an upgraded fuel pump. So basically what people say is this fuel wire is so thin that you're either going to lose voltage at wide open throttle because your 255 Walbro or upgraded pump is not going to get enough current, or it's going to get so hot it's actually going to melt the ECU or relay, which I've also seen pictures of. So my thing is, it's like, hey, why would you ditch a whole harness just because of that? My thing is, I'm just going to upgrade that wire. That's it. I'm just going to unpin that wire from the relay and the other 2 wires that give the other relays power, and just repin it with a thicker gauge wire, and that's it. It's going to literally take me 20 to 30 minutes. And then other than that, this is the O2 plug. There's going to be one of these plugs goes into the ECU. Then from the engine harness, another plug goes into the ECU. And then from the engine harness also, the chassis plug goes into this. And then there's about 9 wires to hardwire into the Lotus side, which I haven't dissected totally, but a majority of them are into this plug, which I will cut. And basically all that is RPM signal, mile per hour signal, fuel level signal. There's like 3 for fuel level, ignition, which is actually the 12 volt switched power. Then we need a constant 12 volt, which is going to come from those big thick red wires down there. And then there's probably and then the starter signal for the starter button. So essentially this car is still going to require its key to be put in AC2, and then press the start button, and interior wise it's all going to function like stock. Now this swap is a lot easier because I'm not trying to retain things like heat, not trying to retain air conditioning or something like that, which would require a lot more custom lines and stuff like that to be run. Most of this stuff I can basically reuse, which is quite nice. And then also I do have my own separate relay for the secondary fuel pump in this surge tank, which I don't even have to worry about that wiring, because if there's a battery connected right now and I turned it to AC2, this fuel pump automatically turns on. So pretty simple. I guess I can move on to the trans now. As you can see, it's gotten quite dark since I've been out. Here are my wheels, here are the stock axles, the under pan belly of the Lotus. So basically, this is a trans, if you didn't know. I actually just received this in the mail. This is the intermediate shaft. This is what kind of covers the distance. This bolts to the block, like right here. It's actually bolted to the block like that. And then an axle goes into that, and then on that side an axle goes in and goes to the wheel because it's closer distance. I didn't mention axles, but they do make swap axles and sane shafts. I bought used ones off of my friend's 800 horsepower Lotus. That's a K24 turbo, I believe. And basically he's upgrading to 1,000 horsepower axles. He didn't damage those axles or anything. There's nothing wrong with them, but I got them for like almost half price of the 500 horsepower axles new. So I'm actually getting 500 horsepower insane shaft axles that will connect here and then go directly to the Lotus hub, and it matches up the spline and everything. That's one of the Lotus swap components. Obviously there's only about 4 or 5 swap components, and that's throttle cable, throttle pedal, axles, and the harness, and then the clutch line. That's basically really it. It's a very simple car. You know, it's engineered very simply, simplicity, lightness, etc. So this is actually a trans out of an 08 SI. Now, RSX Type S 6-speed or the EP3 SI 5-speed, very common options. But in USA, the only Honda trans that came with an LSD, at least from that generation, from the Ks, is the SI 8th gen 6-speed, which is the 06 plus Civic SI, 06 to 2011, I think. It's the 8th generation with the K20 Z3. Now, this is the 08 trans, so it has stronger synchros, but this trans does actually have brand new synchros and bearings in it. I did open it up, brand new synchros and everything, so I shouldn't have problems with shifting. It didn't include anything with it though. It didn't even include the shifter, which I bought for like $120, but you can hear it. I think, yeah. So that selects gear forward or back, and then this raises, so that's when you're doing your side to side, it's actually moving this up or down, and it's like a 3-row thing. So like the top row is first, second, middle is third, fourth, bottom is fifth, sixth, and then one more down is a reverse. So that's what I'm doing, just stock. I will be modifying these a bit, where these pegs right here is actually for the shifter cables, and for the shifter cables I can run just the stock Lotus ones because I already have aftermarket ones. They're very let me just show you the flash. You can see that those are the shifter cables. They'll require a tiny bit of adjustment, but I can run them for the Honda very easily. Now, since I don't have the Honda mono ball ends or whatever they're called, the Heim joints, I will be just cutting this and drilling a hole here, and then just basically bolting that bolt that was in that linkage just now through here and putting a bolt, and then they'll still be in the exact same location, and it'll shift it just fine. I'm waiting on a little bracket that goes right here because the shifter cables actually come from this direction, and then they actually clip into 2 things here to prevent them from wiggling and everything. So it's quite simple, as I mentioned. Stage 2 competition clutch, and then a Fidenza flywheel, and yeah, 08 SI trans. They can usually hold up to mid to high 300 wheel, which is a lot more than the stock Toyota trans can handle as well. And then the GearX first through fourth gear options, the upgrade gears are not that expensive at all compared to the Toyota Blackwatch Racing trans and all that stuff. And it's it'll hold to 500 wheel very easily with that upgrade. So that's really the main reason why I'm switching to Honda, is just the affordability of parts, because sadly, the way I explain it is sadly because 2ZZs, there's not really many Corollas and Celicas with race motors. Most of the race Toyota motors are in Lotuses, the 2ZZ at least, 80-90% of them. So therefore the people that build them, they understand it's for a Lotus client base, so therefore the price of them is jacked up. Now, the great thing about this car is it's so overbuilt and had the most expensive parts in it, which is a great thing. that basically I was able to take out this blown engine, sell the head of it, which is fully built, sell the supercharger full kit off of it, sell the Black Watch Racing transmission off of it, and sell the ECU off of it, and it made a lot of money. Like, I mean, it's more than $10,000 if you're wondering, because maybe you're probably thinking, oh, it's $2,000. No, it's a lot of money. Now those parts cost even more if you buy them brand new, which is what the original guy that kind of converted this from the street car to the to this what it was now did. I believe he told me that he had well over $100,000 in this car, and it really shows because this really is such a proven fast car. Sadly, the race engine, I never explained, but the race engine was kind of towards its life. It was at about over 30 hours of use, probably around 35 plus. So the piston rings, they would just eat through oil basically at this point. So like on the track, this is how I blew it. I topped off my oil right before I got to the track. It was like, half low, topped it off. I ran one full session, 20 minutes. That was about 10 laps. Did not check the oil because I now I know every single session just check the oil. I've never had a car that would burn oil that fast, but basically it burned it to the low mark. And this is a 7-8 quart pan that was in this engine. And then I went out for the next session, as you saw, did about 4 or 5 laps, and then rod knocked. And that was simply because I checked the dipstick. It was below the low mark, the oil mark. So essentially just burned through so much oil that I just had no idea that this motor could burn that much, and it was clearly tired. Now, could I have just kept up with it and kept filling tons of oil every session? Yes, but either way, this motor would have had to go sooner or later because that is a major problem, burning that much oil. So at least I'm lucky that all the parts on it were good, because literally this swap is costing half of what I sold the parts for. So I'm actually making money by selling it. Now, of course, I'm going to end up with 100 wheel horsepower less, but that's a good thing because this car is freakishly fast at 360 wheel, and I would rather dip it down to 230 wheel, which is still very much faster than the stock Exige or S240, because it's just a way better power band, less heat, as I mentioned, better drivability. I'll be on pump gas finally. I'll probably get better gas mileage, all the benefits to me at least. And essentially my goal is to basically get as fast as I was with this car with lower horsepower, and then from there we'll go to a supercharger setup. That's essentially my goal. But once again, there's no point in talking about that because that isn't going to happen immediately. I would like to do a few months of track days and testing on the NA setup to make sure that it doesn't have any issues. I'm probably, once I finish this car, my goal is January 30th, 31st to make it to a 2-day track day at the same track that I blew up at. And my goal is to run it faster than a 150, which is what I ran with 360 wheel. And I plan to run faster than that with 230 wheel. So that's my goal with this car, because I feel like I could improve way more as a driver with it being less horsepower and everything. So that is explanation. I think I'm gonna wrap up the video. I'm trying to think of anything else I haven't really said. But this probably is going to be one of the first cars I fully finish really quickly on this channel. Mainly because the main reason I have all the money for it completely available. I don't have to wait for a paycheck. I don't have to wait for this or that. I've ordered everything. The only thing I have left to spend money on with this thing is oil, like fluids, the tune, and then the fabrication guy fabricating the header to do a 90-degree and fit with my stock exhaust. Or my stock location exhaust. That's not a stock exhaust, but you get my point. And yeah, I mean, that's really the only cost I have left, and everything else is bought in here in my possession, or it's coming in the mail. A lot of stuff are still coming this week and next week, and maybe even early next week. I still don't have the mounts. They said they're supposed to ship Monday or Tuesday of next week. I did get a special bushing compound, which is 95A, which is literally the most stiffest goddamn bushing you can get. Everything in this car already is very solid bushing. They're hard, so why not keep the motor like that? Because these bushings that had the 2ZZ were 85A, so I'm actually going a step higher. But either way, it's still, custom mounts, blah, blah, blah. And I hope to get the engine. It really all depends on the mounts, but early next week, I will have everything I need to do to the motor. I can do it to the motor, put the intake manifold on, set up everything with the lines, blah, 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 mate the transmission on with the clutch, the flywheel, everything, and then I can yoink that up and basically, yeah, once I get the mounts, I can place it into the car. It's not hard to place a motor in this car. It was very easy to take it out. So I can imagine it's actually fairly simple to take a motor, put a motor in. But that's probably where I'm going to end this video. Sorry about the talking as always. But I did take out the motor in the beginning and everything. I do have the 2ZZ ripped apart behind me. Maybe I'll make some kind of table or something. But yeah, that's the swap. The next video, within 2 weeks for sure, expect the motor to be in the car and mounted. I don't know if I'm straight up gonna go for a first start, probably, because it's not that hard. And since I have the full chassis harness already in my possession, maybe over this New Year's weekend I will actually start wiring it into the Lotus end, because everything on the Honda end is plug and play, everything on the Lotus end is hardwired. So I'll wire it all in so that once the motor drops in there and the engine harness is on the motor, I can just plug everything in and just immediately go for a first start. It's just going to be drop in, plug the harness in, and fill fluids, connect the fuel line. I don't even have to bother putting on the radiator hoses or anything like that, because I can, first attempt start it without. And yeah, it's basically just going to go from there. Hopefully, like I said, this month, January, or next year, car will be done or dialed, and then I'll probably street drive it. I'll honestly drive it to work. If I finish this more than a week before the track day, I will actually just start driving it to work after the tune, just to dial it if there's any kind of issues, like anything. If there's tiny oil leaks, coolant leaks, something not warming up, some kind of issues with it cutting out at floor, if there's any kind of issues, I like to work them out before the track day, because the best way to really diagnose a car is just street drive it a ton, honestly. Then there are, those issues that will only happen on a track, which are usually the more extreme issues. So that's hopefully my goal. And then for all the OGs in the channel, if it does work out, I will be seeing the Need for Speed M3 GTR on February 5th, because if that track day works, I will be doing Chuckwalla Raceway in California. And the guy who built the Need for Speed M3 GTR, that's like a almost perfect replica, I've been talking to him forever, for like years actually now. So he's doing a private track day there for like charity, so I'll actually be testing that out there, because that's a really fast track. But anyways, as always, sorry about the talking. I just try to give as much detail as possible. Just cause if you're here, if you're like a Lotus owner and you're considering this swap, that's the whole point of this video base, is for you basically, and for myself, because I like documenting this stuff. But it's basically for you to see, like, hey, what's involved with the swap. 'Cause sometimes the forums, they're just not specific enough, and then people try to ask questions to shops, and they won't really give the answer, because obviously their shop, their business, they're gonna be like, hey, 20K, drop it off, we'll do everything for you, But this is a more DIY approach, as always, with everything that I do. So yeah, look forward to it. It's just sucked, because this whole Christmas weekend and now into this New Year weekend, I haven't really had much stuff to do, which sucks, because literally the first week I blew up the car. Within the first week, I had the full motor out, torn apart, everything. And if I had all the parts already bought and in front of me, I could have swapped an engine in there within the same week or two. So anyways, thanks for watching, as always. Look forward to the next video. Like I said, will be week to 2 minimum before it comes out, but will be obviously a major update to this build. I just wanted to go over all the parts and whatnot and small details that you guys might be asking. So have a good night, have a good day, and see you in the next video.